Am I the asshole for holding a grudge against my dad who took my step-siblings to Paris but not me? A few weeks ago I learned from my stepbrother's TikTok that my dad, stepmom and 2 stepbrothers are in Paris. I was staying with my mom at the time. I'm F16 and would have loved to be there, but they didn't even tell me they were going. I immediately sent a text to my dad asking if they're enjoying their time in Paris, and despite reading it he didn't reply until late at night. Then he tried to play dumb and said it's great and he wished I could be there. Yeah, me too. So I replied that he could have taken me and he said it wasn't possible and we'll talk about it later. So when they returned I told them that I'm hurt that they didn't take me. My dad took me aside and told me that their finances are very tight. This vacation was a gift from stepmom's parents and they only bought it for my dad, their daughter and their own grandchildren and not me. He reminded me that I shouldn't act in an entitled way. They were effectively guests, even though the grandparents weren't there, they just paid for it. And I wasn't invited, so I shouldn't act in an entitled way. I wasn't convinced. They could have refused to go without me, paid for me themselves, gone somewhere cheaper, stayed a little less longer, or asked my mom to pitch in, and she would have. Me not being there was exclusionary. If this was only about money they could have made it work. So I told my dad that I was disappointed in him. So came last night and my stepmom's parents came over for dinner. The subject of the vacation came up and everyone was tacky BG about it, and I was just sitting there being quiet until I thanked them for doing such a nice thing for the family, while my dad looked at me in a frowny way. Everyone went quiet. My dad tried explaining that I should have understood that this was a very expensive gift. I'm acting like an entitled brat and should go to my room if I can't behave myself. I said it doesn't seem like I belong anyway and told them to enjoy your family dinner and left. Later the grandmother came to my room and tried explaining that they gifted this to their grandchildren and couldn't afford to include me as well. She said they initially only had a budget for 3, their daughter and grandchildren, but stretched themselves to 4 to include my dad as well. But while they wished they could have done it for me too, they could really not stretch it to 5. So I told her my problem is with my dad and I have no beef with her, but she doesn't get to act like she cares about me either, and it's okay. I was like, I'm a stranger to you and you don't care about me. So have some balls, put your big girl pants on and wear it on your sleeve, and asked her to get the F out of my room. She left and I heard her telling my dad that I was very rude to her, so I'm grounded until further notice. Am I acting like an entitled brat and am I the asshole in this situation? Edit. Not that it's relevant, but step-grandmother's comment about trying to include me but not being able to work out the budget was nonsense. They're very rich and this was an excuse and she was taking me for a fool. But this is not relevant to me holding a grudge against my dad. I'm only specifying it for clarity. And tried explaining that they gifted this to their grandchildren, which now includes you. This is a pretty easy not the asshole. They could have gifted something for the whole family but they didn't. Your dad didn't decline and say if his daughter can't go he won't be going. This is clearly going to be a NC situation in the future. Not the asshole. Call your mom and go home. Not the asshole. Your dad is shameful. The grandmother is too, to make an excuse but pretend she would have loved to include you. And they hid it for a reason. Nobody told you, you had to see it on social media. I don't understand people calling this child an asshole because what they did, excluding the child who isn't now part of their little immediate household circle, was abhorrent. And if anyone saw OP's clarifying comment, Granny has enough money to hand out new cars. She is lying about affordability. Perhaps they don't owe a non-blood grandchild anything on paper, but to exclude a child in the family for any reason is cold and tells me they are very morally bankrupt. Not taking you is one thing. The fact that they tried to be sneaky and hope you didn't find out is where this becomes not the asshole. You're right, there may have been ways they could have accommodated you going on the trip, but how you handled it was not okay either, specifically what you said to the grandmother. It's her choice how she spends her money. You are not familiar with the details of her specific financial situation and you are not entitled to her money. The grandmother doesn't need to include you. This whole, she gifted it to her grandchildren, now it includes you, is BS. She only wanted it for her grandkids and daughter. Probably was forced to extend it to include the dad. If finances are tight, dad could have talked to the mom or at least be upfront about the trip and plans. He's not obligated to ensure you can travel with them. That way you're entitled in this aspect. That you don't feel included is another story. Especially if they talk about the trip in front of you. I get you're upset and the way you responded is totally okay. Dad screwed this one up 100%, but there's no blame on the grandmother. Am I the asshole for telling my girlfriend to move back to her own country if she won't learn my language? Help me settle this. I'm Dutch, 28 male, and my girlfriend is Italian, 25 female. We live in the Netherlands in a city where you can get by even if you speak only English. She is living here for 5 years, and we are dating for almost 2 years. She speaks no Dutch and makes no effort to learn. Even simple phrases, greetings, she won't bother with them. I didn't really care in the beginning, but as time goes by, I find it strange that someone can live in a place for years and refuse to learn the native language. She says Dutch is difficult, sounds ugly, and she doesn't need it for her work or social life, so what's the point? That's all true, but for some reason it bothers me. This morning we were talking about where to travel on a holiday, and the topic of language came up. When I suggested showing her a part of the Netherlands that she hasn't seen, it pissed me off when she joked that she wants to go on holiday somewhere she doesn't have to hear Dutch. It left a bad taste, so I said let's talk about this later and tried to end the conversation. That didn't go as planned. She followed me asking why am I acting like this over a joke, and eventually it turned into a big argument. She asked me why does it matter when pretty much any Dutch person speaks English anyways, why do I even care? I said how would she like it if I moved to her country and refused to learn her language? She said, if Italian sounded ugly like Dutch, then I would get it. In the heat of the moment I said, if that's what you think, then maybe you should move back there. I don't really feel that way, I was just angry. But she said this crossed a line and doesn't speak to me now. Am I the asshole for what I said, and also for being pissed that she won't learn my language? Not the asshole. She's telling a Dutch person that their language sounds ugly, which is bigoted BTW, and she doesn't need it for her social life, which includes her partner, right? Most people realize that when you're in another country than your own it's polite to at least be able to say courtesies and basic phrases in that country's language. Her attitude would be a deal breaker for me. I hope you find someone more compatible with a better worldview, because if that's her attitude toward her host country I imagine she's rather high maintenance in other ways also. Not the asshole. After 5 years, she should have at least learned the basics through osmosis. Not to do so takes a concentrated effort. Do you speak Italian? If not, perhaps you could offer to trade language lessons. Not the asshole. So what would happen if she got stuck somewhere in your country that doesn't speak as much English? She'd be stranded and rude to people, I bet. I do find it very rude to move to another country and refuse to learn even the basics of the language. You might have been joking, but do you really want to spend your life with someone who is so hostile against your homeland? Not the asshole. I am from the US but live in Portugal now. That is a difficult language to me. I learned all the usual phrases before I came and am picking up new words every day. Actually, with my southern accent it seems like I am making an entire new language. But it seems to mean a lot to people that I am trying. I don't understand how someone can live in a country for 5 years and not speak the language at all. It's not respectful. Not the asshole to call another language ugly is just rude. She crossed a line by refusing to accept your culture and instead blowing it off as ugly. I dated a Dutch man living in Australia. I am American, so we both communicated in English, and I learned several Dutch phrases and words in order to show him how much I cared. It's not hard to embrace other cultures and languages. Not the asshole. Her rationale is pretty ridiculous and you have every right to be offended. Am I the asshole for confronting my neighbor who is obviously stealing produce from my garden? This spring a young woman, let's call her Kristen, moved into the house next door to me. She owns some sort of catering business for weddings and runs an Instagram account about food. We live in a semi-remote area about 15 minutes outside of a small town. During pandemic I got very into gardening, and love my thriving vegetable and herb garden. I tend to it very carefully and I love that I can feed my husband and kids with food I have grown. This summer, produce has begun disappearing. Some of my tomatoes, squash, eggplants and herbs will disappear overnight. I see no signs of animals chewing them. No vegetables disappeared from my garden last summer. Obviously someone is taking them. Kristen is the nearest house to mine, the other nearest are a bit of a walk down the road, and she is right next door, and I find it very suspicious that they began disappearing right after she moved in. I even checked her Instagram and see her posting photos of food this very week featuring the exact produce that's gone missing from my garden: tomatoes, zucchini, eggplant, herbs. I confronted her about this yesterday evening and she became very, very defensive. She said I was crazy and that she had no reason to steal from me as there is a farmer's market right down the road and she grows her own windowsill herbs and has a supplier for her business. She even had the audacity to brag about how much money she makes, saying that her business brings in good money and that she would have no need to steal. From her defensiveness and this level of bragging, it seems obvious to me that she is lying. Things got ugly and she slammed her door in my face, which to me seems like further proof of guilt. Am I the asshole? Should I have gone about this differently? She is clearly stealing from me and clearly lying about it. Get a security camera and get proof if she's the one doing it. 2 words. Security cameras. Without any real evidence, you are the asshole. You should have put up cameras and gotten proof that she was stealing from you. You are the asshole because you started accusing her without any proof. You are the asshole. That's a pretty strong, relationship-destroying accusation without proof. And depending on where you live, that combo of veggies is currently in season and available in great abundance. You don't know what she's growing at the moment. You should put up a camera, don't tell her, and apologize. Then let the camera do its work. Go back and tell her this. Say I understand you say it is not you. And you shouldn't have accused her without proof and you are sorry for that. But someone is obviously trespassing onto property and stealing. And that you set up a camera to catch them. Then set up the camera. Either she will stop or you will catch who it is. However, I don't always agree defensive equal guilt. BC and the flip side people say oh they didn't have anything to say. Couldn't defend themselves. So they must be guilty. So you can't always win with that one even if the person is innocent. You are the asshole for now because you are accusing her without proof. You are the asshole, because you don't have any actual proof. The vegetables and herbs she's posting pics of are in season right now and she could have bought them anywhere. If you install a security camera, you will then have proof. Am I the asshole for not asking for money after taking a neighbor's kid to the urgent care? Okay, so, this happened on Wednesday and my husband is still giving me the cold shoulder. It was about 1 in the afternoon when I, 33F, hear a knock at the door. I open it to see the 2 boys who live above us in a panic. 8M was washing the dishes when they dropped a glass in the sink, breaking it and accidentally cutting a large gash into their palm. Not something a simple band-aid could fix. They ask me for help as both their mom, 31F father not in picture, and their emergency contact were respectively at least 40–60 minutes away. They called 911 and had already been waiting 15 minutes upstairs for help, but there was little sign of quick assistance. Our emergency medical system is pretty broken at the moment. You're lucky to get an ambulance within 35 minutes even if you're experiencing a heart attack or have stopped breathing. It's bad, so I'm sadly not surprised. Anyways, I quickly get myself together, wrap 8M's hand a little better with a towel, call a taxi and off we go to the urgent care. 16M spoke to their mom on the way and kept mom up to date. Mom asked me if I wouldn't mind staying with them until she was able to get there. Estimated another 30 minutes. Ended up being 60 due to traffic. Sure, NBD, we're on our way and everything will be okay, she can take her time. Her boys are being looked after. The ride was only about $15, about a 10-minute ride. And I spent another $20 on food and a treat for them both. I'm sure after all the panic they were not feeling all that great, felt better after checking at UC, and getting a little food and sugar back into their system couldn't hurt. Mom finally arrives and is extremely thankful. I say no worries at all, happy to help. Wish them all luck and head on home. Later found out 8M had to get a few stitches but handled it like a champ. Hubby, 35M, gets home. The hellos and daily debriefing happens. I tell him about the boys and everything. He's glad everyone was okay but goes on to ask when I'm going to ask Jenna when she'll be paying us back. I was a little surprised and told him I hadn't planned on it. She doesn't know it cost us anything and it's not a lot of money. It's $35, it's not going to break our bank. It was an emergency NBD. He counters with how we're trying to save for a house, car payments, all this other stuff and starts getting very hot under the collar. I tell him I'm not going to ask her but if she offers cash as a thank you I won't decline. I'm not going to chase her down however. He called me a fool and wasteful, and that her children aren't our financial responsibility. I just rolled my eyes and walked out of the room. I spoke to my mom who agreed they're not our financial responsibility but also said that what I did was a kind thing and what lots of people would have done. So, sort of split the middle I guess? Hubby is still pissed and now I'm wondering what I'm missing. Am I the asshole? Thank you for your opinion. Hoping to see if I have a blind spot I can't see myself. Not the asshole, but your husband is a big one. My God, he has no heart. Not the asshole. $35 is nothing in the great scheme of things. It isn't going to make or break your fund to buy a house, and it was an emergency situation. That uncharitableness is really disturbing, honestly. Not the asshole. You should ask your husband if there's something new about your financial situation that you don't know. So your husband considers you a fool for not prioritizing money during a medical emergency among children? WTF. I don't know how I would feel about a partner who values materialistic things above humanitarian things. Especially since you said $35 won't break your bank. Not the asshole, but your husband is. Not the asshole. There was an emergency and you handled it with care and kindness. I hope everyone would have done the same if two scared children arrived on their doorstep. Like you, I wouldn't have asked for the money. And if I were the mother, I would offer, though it might take a few days, since she was more focused on her kids when she arrived. I think you did the right thing, and again I wouldn't ask for the money either. He might disagree, but to be this angry over it seems over the top and out of order. Is something else going on? Or is he always quick to anger and petty behavior? Not the asshole. As I began reading this, I thought this was going to be about the medical bill. What you did is something that good humans do. If $35 is a huge deal to your husband, I suggest not buying a house. Unexpected costs for a home much more than $35 come up all the time.